Hello and welcome to another episode of Inspired Women Gathering. This is a show that talks about all things from life, relationships, spirituality, business, and everything in between. Women are so inspiring, living through their stories, finding resilience, resourcefulness, tenacity, and the powerful impact that we make in the world. I love connecting and having deep conversations, sharing with you the women I am inspired by and so blessed to know. My name is Dixie Bennett. I'm your host, and I'm a soulful woman and wealth coach and healer, helping heart-centered entrepreneurial women heal their self-worth, embody their soul purpose, and create sustainable business with heart. I created this platform to highlight amazing women I come across and connect with, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. I am so excited to introduce to you today my beautiful guest, Joy Smith, and our topic is Understand Your Fur Babies. Joy Smith is an international animal communicator and animal Reiki master healer who believes animals are sentient beings that deserve to have a voice and be heard. She is passionate about helping animals and humans find a way to commune in a more powerful way. Joy got introduced to Reiki when she was going through a depressive state. Her whole life changed in a year when she lost both her parents and her beloved dog. She decided to leave her corporate career in human resources to work with animals full-time. She has helped hundreds of animals become more confident, transforming the relationship between the animal and their person as they became more in sync. Volunteering at the Humane Society to help speed up the emotional and physical healing of animals so they can be adopted out more quickly is something that she loves to do. Her life mission is to help heal animals and in turn their person, transforming their lives for the better. So thank you so much, Joy, for being with us today.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
So where in the world are you from? Where are you coming from?
I'm in Red Deer, Alberta. Yeah.
Beautiful. And have you always been there?
No, I'm from the Northwest Territories originally. So yeah, so I've been in Alberta 2005. I moved here.
Oh, wow.
Or 2004, sorry.
I don't know if I knew that about Northwest
Yeah.
Territories.
Yeah.
That's something new. I
hmm
love that. Always learning
Yeah.
something.
hmm
So I'd love for you to share with us. I know you talk in your bio, there's a little bit of information there about how you went through a transformative experience, losing both your parents in 1 year. I couldn't imagine. And shifting your career, which is so many massive shifts. And I'd just love for you to share with us a little bit about your story. What started you on this path, and just share some of your awakenings and experiences to bring you into who you are today.
Okay. So as you mentioned, I was going through a depressive episode and I had gone through several and I was quite desperate and I heard about this Reiki master. So I went to her and I think it was like 3 times. And on the third time, like I just felt like a black cloud had lifted and I just thought, wow, this is pretty powerful. And anybody can learn how to do it. So I went and I got my level 2. And at that time, I had just been hired as a manager of human resources. And the office that I was working in, they had a fish tank. And these poor fish had been, neglected for I don't know how long. And so right away, I started giving them Reiki to help them out. And I learned all about, the pH balance and stuff like that. It's kind of complicated. And yeah, and so I kind of got my whole team in on helping the fish and having them become part of the environment. Um, so I started working, with animals right away. And then I got my master's and I had a class in animal communication. And it was like, wow, this whole kind of thing, gift opened up in me. And so with animals, like they're part of the family, and just like us wanting to know what's going on, they need to know what's going on too. And there's just so many issues and trauma that animals experience, and anxiety, just because they don't understand what's happening in the family and in the household and stuff. And so I started working with animals, and I was still manager of human resources. And one of the ladies in my office, she became a mentor and was very spiritual. And she kept on telling me, Joy, you're meant to work with animals. Joy, you're meant to work with animals. And I thought, oh, okay. But I had a lot of respect for her, and I know she, communes with spirit, and I thought, okay, well, so I started working more with animals, and then, like you said, 1 year, like I lost my dog, and 4 months later, I think it was, I lost my mom, and then 5 months later, I lost my dad, and yeah, I was going through a real tough time, and so, I just thought, I was like 30 years in human resources, and I'm just going to work with animals. And so that's what I've been doing since I think 2015, and I absolutely love it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful. So, and go back to, that's a significant loss. Your animal best friend, your parents both leaving you. And so, and then in between that time, so where you were still working in corporate, obviously, and then
Yes.
how did Reiki support you during that transition? I know you said before that you had 3 sessions, you felt like a big cloud lifted off of you. But
Mhm.
what else helped you through that time?
Yeah, just friends, and spiritual groups and stuff. And yeah, and I, of course, when I got my Reiki masters, my master Reiki person, I got her to help me quite often too. So that's one thing I found out is you just can't do it alone, like no matter how skilled you are, I need help, like just that's just the way life is, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Hmm.
think well, it's always important. We need to have our community and our tribe, and I always find in my own experiences that they tend to show up like they're messengers of earth angels or whatever experience that was. I know
Yeah.
when I would transitioned, when I was going through my transition between corporate and going into spirituality and into my own business,
Hmm.
all of a sudden I had so many community people starting to show up, and I would get phone calls sometimes saying, "People, Dixie, I need to give you a healing. I don't know why." And I'm like, it was so
Oh,
timely.
oh wow.
I just had people come out of the woodwork. My Reiki, had taken Reiki at the same time as I was transitioning,
Hmm.
and learned my modalities too. So when you made the decision to leave corporate, what was your experience going from corporate into, I'm now going to be a healer and work with animals?
Yeah, well, it took me a little while to build clientele and get out there. And so one of the I guess big ways I got a lot of experience was volunteering at the Humane Society. Before that, I volunteered at the Medicine River Wildlife Center, and that was pretty cool too. But I was off work, and for a while there, like I was struggling, and not only was I able to help the animals, but they helped me. And I was going there, every day. It was like I was an employee for a while there, and yeah, and then I started teaching animal communication, and um, you know, just just the difference that it makes in animals. It just really warms my heart. And one of the things I find, one of my specialties, I guess, is working with abused animals that have been through trauma, that have lots of anxiety and stuff like that. And I just seem to be drawn to them, and have become quite skilled at helping them to release that anxiety. And of course, I've worked with a lot of rescues in that have been adopted out and stuff. And some people, their animals are destroying their house because they're freaking out, and they don't know what's going on. And just to go and work with, say, a dog, that the owners, they'd tried medication for this one dog, Bailey, I'll talk about her. And she, had chewed through a chain link fence and got out of her kennel and was just destroying everything in the house. And, the owners just felt so bad for her, and they didn't know what to do. And they thought, like, are we going to have to give her back? Because, anyways, so I was able to work with Bailey, and I think I did about 4 sessions or 5 sessions with her. And one of the main things too was just telling her how much her mom and dad loved her, and that it was her forever home, because I find most dogs or dogs, cats, whatever, that have been in a rescue center, they feel abandoned, and they're so terrified that they're, that they're going to be left alone. And so talking and doing, Reiki, and I do lots of other things too, really transformed her life around and basically kind of saved her life. Yeah. And let's see, I've worked with, some animals that have been through horrific things. I worked with one dog. She was a rescue, and the lady had another dog, and she lived out in the country, and the two dogs were out together, and one of the dogs got shot right in front of this other dog. So Mickey was her name, and his name. And yeah, that dog was just so traumatized, and I was able to turn that dog's life around too. So it's when I hear things like that, or I see things like that, it's just like, oh yes, this is what I'm meant to do. This is, I'm meant to really, to serve the animal kingdom, really, and in turn their person, because of course we're affected by our animals too, right? We love our animals so much, and when we see them in pain and suffering, it's just, yeah, they really need someone like me to help them, so yeah.
Well, I
Mhm.
know since I've met with you, well, since we've connected, I really noticed I hear a lot of my friends now with animals, and they're like, I don't know why my dog's doing this, or I don't know why my cat's doing this. I'm like, well, have you talked to them? They're like, no. I'm like, well, how long have you had this animal? Oh, like, 17 years, 15 years. And and they talk to them like, they love them and coo with them and the animal,
Mhm.
but they don't actually have human conversations and letting them know what's actually happening. Um,
Yeah, like
and
it's so, oh sorry, go on.
yeah, that's okay. Well,
It's just you go first.
I think it's such an important thing that I mean, I didn't even think about until you and I had talked, and now I hear it with my friends and my colleagues and my clients all the time. And I'm just like, well, have you had a conversation with them? Have you talked to them and let them know what's going on? And they're like, well,
Yeah.
no. And so I've kind of helped coach them a little bit. I'm like, well, you should have a conversation with them. And
Yeah.
one of my girlfriends actually just recently was moving, and all the boxes and everything were around the house, and the dog was their sweet little dog, just like a little teacup dog.
Mhm.
It was like
Mhm.
mopey and sad, and she's like, I just don't understand what's going on. And I said, well, have you talked to your dog and told him that you're moving? And she's like, well, no. Why would that matter? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
well, because it's their environment, it's their home, and
Mhm.
everything's going into boxes and it's confusing to them. And
Yes.
and then when they moved in, they actually, I guess they went for a walk, and the dog thought they were in their new home, and the door to the neighbor's house was open, and their dog went running into that house. And I guess there was two big dogs that were in there, and this
Yeah.
poor little dog was so traumatized and
Mm.
just went in, ran amok around the house, was so confused and disoriented, and finally came out, and it was just, that was their introduction to the new neighborhood. So, and
Right.
the
Oh
poor
yeah.
little dog was going through some trauma. So
Mhm.
I'd really love for you to share a little bit more about why it's so important and what kind of conversations people should have with their animals.
Okay, well, there's so many. And so first of all, when I say talk to your animals, some people like, how do you do that? Well, just talk to them like that, they're like a young person, a 2 or 3 year old maybe, and explain things to them step by step. And even, for example, I worked with this one dog, Pebbles, and she belonged to a family and was really close with their daughter, and their daughter went off to university. And all of a sudden Pebbles started peeing and pooping in the house, and they didn't know what was going on. So I went to work with Pebbles, and she didn't understand why their daughter had left, and she actually thought that she did something wrong, that it was her fault. And this happens so often with animals. When, you know, when someone leaves the house or whatever, you know, they feel like they're responsible for it, you know. So I simply, you know, explained to her, no, you know, she's gone off to school, she still loves you, and she will be coming back, you know, you will see her this summer. And right after that, you know, the dog stopped, you know, peeing and pooping outside. So that's one thing. You know, if yeah, I got another example too. A lot of times when things like this happen and an animal doesn't understand, it will manifest physically in the animal. One dog that I was hired to work with had like a severe rash, and I'm going to call him Boomer. And so I went to work with Boomer, and, you know, was giving him healing and stuff. And I said, you know, Boomer, do you know why you got this rash? And I should back up and said they've tried, you know, different diets and medication and so on. And anyways, Boomer didn't understand. And the daughter was there at the time, and she was quite intuitive. And she said, well, you know, my mom and dad split up about a year and a half ago, and they had two dogs, and one dog went with the dad, and Boomer stayed with them, you know. So the next time I went and worked with Boomer, I said, you know, I think it's really important to, you know, that we have a discussion about what happened. And Boomer, it broke my heart, because he said, you know, with the other dog, like they were fighting a lot towards the end, right? And that makes sense, because if a family is breaking up, then usually there's a lot of tension and stuff in the house. And anyways, he said to me, he said he was my best friend. Just, yeah, that, anyways, you know, so and then he said, well, I understand now what happened. And I never worked with Boomer after that, but that just goes to show how things can manifest in a house. I also worked with this one dog, Caesar, Czar was his name, and him and Kayla, and they lived with the mom, and she had her son, older son, that had a lot of medical issues. And Czar was his dog, and Czar actually saved him at one time. Anyways, Sandra had gone on a holiday and left the two dogs with her son, and shortly thereafter, I think her son died in the house. So these dogs were, I think, alone with him for about 10 days. And anyway, so fast forward like a year and a half later, so Sandra brought the dogs in for me to work with them, and Kayla didn't want to talk about it. She was, you know, she just didn't, it was painful, didn't want to talk about it. But Czar, when I started talking to him, he's a big dog, and he came over and he sat on my lap, and you know, and he started saying that he felt like he should have saved her son, and he thought it was his fault. And literally he just was shaking, like he was just I'll never forget that as long as I live. Like it was just, anyways, we talked about it and told him that it wasn't his fault, and, you know, and went through. So a lot of what I do is like counseling, like I'm a counselor for animals. And you know, after a while he quit shaking and he was okay. And, you know, I talked to the owner later, and she said like both of the dogs were a lot more calm, seemed less depressed. And, you know, you think about it, like he was carrying that around with him for a year and a half. Like, wow. And yeah, it's just, I get emotional thinking about some of the things. So, you know, and even, you know, an animal passing, moving, like definitely talk to your animals about if they're moving. Even, you know, if you have someone moving in the house too, or even visiting, you know, like people don't think about it, but, you know, these people are in their animal space too. And they might wonder, like, when are they, you know, are they here forever? Or are they going to leave? You know, let them know, okay, they're going to be here for 4 days, or, you know, 4 sleeps, or, you know, they do understand time. So that's just like some of the things. Basically, you know, whenever there's a change happening, talk to your animals about it, you know, or something, you know, traumatic has happened. Sometimes, you know, like an animal, like they've got brothers and sisters, and one of them goes to the vet and something happens and they don't come back home, you know, they pass. And they're wondering, well, where is my friend, you know, stuff like that. So it's really becoming into the mindset that just like people, animals need to understand too, and they're so smart and so intelligent, and a lot of people don't give them credit for that, you know. And so that's the one main, you know, message I have is like, for God's sake, talk to your animals and tell people to talk to their animals. There's nothing wrong with it. If people don't understand, well, too bad, you know. So yeah, so those are just some of the stories that, yeah.
Yeah, the human animal connection is really important.
Yeah, and another thing sometimes people don't realize too is, you know, when the human is going through stuff or sick or you know, an animal will a lot of times take on our stuff to try and help us out. So, you know, sometimes we need to really look at that. I I worked with this one lady. I don't work with people so much anymore for healing. It's just strictly animals. But I was working with, you know, people. And this one lady came in, and she had been having like panic attacks and stuff. So I did a Reiki session with her, and then she came back about a month later, and she lived out in the country and had horses. And she said, "You know, Joy," she said, before like I came to see you, her one horse would just like race back and forth along the fence. And she said, after I had that Reiki session, my horse didn't do that anymore, you know. So sometimes animals, they do things so we'll get help too ourselves. Like I actually went to work with these two dogs. They were brothers, and they used to fight all the time. And so I went and worked with them, and things calmed down. And then anyways, things started acting up again, and they were getting in scraps and stuff. And so when I went there to work with these two dogs, I think it was Striker, and he looked at me and they said, well, you're here for Mom. She needs help. And she, you know, she was going through so much stress and stuff at that time. And so I ended up working with her. So a lot of times too, you know, like, the people need help, and it's affecting our animals. So they had to get me there somehow. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I love
Yeah. Yeah.
um with the animals, so at what point would a human, like would the human actually seek out your services?
Well, I think, you know, definitely if you have an animal that you think has gone through trauma or, you know, some kind of abuse or lots of anxiety, definitely, you know, a person like me would be good to see. If they're sick too, like I help, you know, animals that have, you know, illnesses and stuff. Actually, this one dog that I worked with, Dodge, and he has, I forget what it's called, but it's a um, spinal disease, I guess, degenerative disease, you know, and in his hips and stuff. And I've changed his life around from, you know, not being able to move very much to, you know, now going for walks and wanting to, you know, just bulldoze ahead and just, you know, happier. If your animal is acting out all of a sudden, like if something's changed and you're like, okay, what's going on? Well, a lot of times, you know, I'd be able to figure out what's going on, right? And yeah, so
Mhm.
things like that.
And
Yeah.
besides cats and animals, what are some of the other animals that you like to work with?
Oh, I work with all kinds. I've worked with birds. I worked with this one bird who was self-mutilating for years and plucking out his feathers and stuff like that. So I was able to help him to actually get off his cone, you know, his cone off, and she felt like she was getting her bird back, you know. I've worked with lots of horses. I worked with, you know, guinea pigs. I worked with, but mostly, you know, horses, cats, and dogs, right? Yeah. But I worked with bearded dragon lizard. They're pretty cool, pretty smart, you know, and they've got different animals at the Humane Society too. Like I've talked to, you know, a snake and stuff like that. You can communicate with any animal, you know. So
Mhm.
yeah, so it's pretty cool and very, very rewarding.
Yeah, that's so cool. What's the weirdest story that you have? Like the weirdest experience you've had with an animal?
Um, Well, I've had a couple of funny experiences.
Okay.
I was working with this one horse. Rex was his name, and he is a very calm, well-behaved horse. And anyways, for this time, he was living out in this pasture with Mel, this mare. And the owner went to get him one day because he had to get a farrier to work on his tentacles and stuff. And anyways, he was rearing up and just, being really dangerous, and just, yeah, like I think it took like an hour and a half for her to do the front hooves of the horse. So the owner got me to work with Rex. And so first of all, Rex was really sorry and felt ashamed of what he did. He was saying that, and I said, so what happened? And he said that he got in a fight with Mel. And I said, oh, okay. And then I said to him, well, can you tell me a little bit about this? And he told me, none of your business. And I've never had an animal tell me none of your business before, right? That was pretty funny. And anyways, we talked about other things and him being safe and stuff like that. And this one cat cracked me up one time. Mr. Fantastic was her name. And I was working her for a few different things, but one of the concerns was that she was overweight, and the owner was quite concerned, and the vet was quite concerned. And so I was talking to her, and she said, she says, I know I'm overweight, she said, but I'm not particularly concerned about it. I just cracked right up. It's too funny. And I get that, right? It's just like, yeah, anyways, totally understandable, but things are just, you just never know what's going to come out of their mouths, right? Or not out of their mouths, but what they're going to say telepathically. It's really quite funny. Yeah.
So at what point did you realize that you had the telepathic connection? Because I know you talked about, your colleague at the office who said you should really work with animals. And then you decided that you were going to go and work with animals. But what was when did you realize or recognize that that was sort of the path that you were meant to follow?
Well, actually, I might have been communicating with animals all along. A lot of people are, and they don't realize it. But it was my mentor that said to me, she knew a lady that taught animal communication. She said, well, Joy, go to this course. So I did. And I've taken, lifelong learning, lots of other courses and training since then. But, that's when. And that with energetic healing and stuff, it really works well together. And one of the things I find a lot of times when an animal is having behavioral issues and stuff, if I can balance their energetic body, then a lot of those things will just go away. So it just works so well together, being able to talk to them and and do the energy work as well. So and that's what I do. It's animal healing, and it's just whatever is required. And I'm learning new techniques all the time, for trauma release and stuff like that. And so it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to go back even further back because you talked about working with the SPCA and the wilderness
Medicine River Wildlife Center. Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of your safe haven where you went to every single day and where you were working like an employee, but volunteering.
Yeah.
And so talk a bit about those animals, like when they're coming in, how do they come in? How do you work with, like, do you do regular sessions with them, or is it once in a while, or you just check in with them and see what they need and then they're fine?
A lot of times, because when animals go to the Humane Society, they'll be in the holding area, until they get, medically checked and behavioral and stuff like that. And so sometimes I'll ask, does any animal need help right now? But a lot of times I'll just kind of go through and just, kind of see, see which ones I'm drawn to. And I have to, I'll tell another story. So there was a Milk River rescue, I think, where over 200 animals were rescued from this property, and the Humane Society took on 40 of them. And so anyways, this one dog, Sable, she was there, and so I started working with her, and she was quite terrified, And so the way the kennels are is like in the front, they have like a front section with the bed and stuff, and then they've got another section with their food and stuff. And so she would be like way in the back. And so I went and I worked with her, I think 3 times, and I said, you know, I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can get a little bit closer to her. So I went and I sat on her bed, and as clear as day, she said, I wish that lady would get off my bed. So I laughed, and I got off her bed. I gave her space, and you know, we ended up being like best friends. Like, I love her so much, you know, and you know, she became really trusting and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just you know, and ones that have had surgery and stuff, you know, I work with them, and yeah, just kind of whoever I'm kind of drawn to, to help out.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
about some of the animals like that have been struggling to be adopted out? Like as you work with them, do
Oh
they get
yeah.
adopted out
Forgot to
here?
I forgot to tell. So I like to, you know, first of all, tell the animals why they're in the Humane Society, you know, and, you know, that they're safe and everybody will treat them kindly and that they're there to be adopted. So I have like an adoption talk with them, you know, so I really, you know, try and, you know, build up their self-esteem and tell them like how good they are. And I tell them, you know, like start thinking about the things you like to do and, you know, the type of family you want, you know, like, and, you know, do you like to go for walks? Do you like to play for, you know, ball? Do you like to, you know, do you want a yard? All these kinds of things and stuff. And I say, you know, you start thinking about that. And I say, like, you'll attract them. And, you know, and this is super cool. You know, it really does work. This one dog I worked with, Joe, he was a Rottie, and he came from another rescue, and he had been at the Humane Society for, I think it was like 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And I found out, you know, that day I went to work with him that he was going to be going back to, I think, McDonald's rescue. And so I had my adoption talk with him and, you know, really worked at building the self-esteem. And you know what? He got adopted the next day. Like, not that it always happens like that, but that's super cool. And I had that happen with a kitty that I was working with in one of the pet value stores. And so they taken kitties from Whisker Rescues to be adopted. And Jasper was his name, and all his siblings had been adopted and he hadn't. And so he was going to be going back. And so I was carrying him around with me, giving him Reiki for about a half hour, and I was talking to him, you know, how he was such a good kitty and deserved to have a good home, and had my adoption talk. And he was adopted before I left that day. It's like amazing. It's just amazing, you know. And you think of the law of attraction, and I read this in one of my animal communicator books, and I thought, like, wow, yeah, like, let's start talking to them about that. And it's really important to tell them why, you know, why they're there, right? You know, you're here so we can find you a good home. And you know, a lot of them feel really bad, you know, about being abandoned, and you know, so just to really build them up.
Oh, I love that you shared that. I never thought about the law of attraction working with animals and with
Yeah,
any other
it's
thing, right? We just think about it for ourselves and what we
I
want to put out
know.
there.
I know. It's just super cool, super cool.
Very cool.
And yeah, I have a story to tell about this one dog that I worked with last year, and so I teach animal communication, and I do animal communication 101, which is just basically talking about one-way animal communication, like I was saying, talk to your animals like they're young kids and stuff. And anyways, so this was at the Humane Society, and this one lady came to me afterwards, and she said that her dog was quite sick, and we talked, and Kobe was his name. And anyways, he was actually in her vehicle, and I went out to see him, and I remember like he looked at me and he said like, can you help me? And anyway, so he basically was very lethargic. He hadn't eaten anything in days, and he was hardly drinking any water. And he had things going on with him, like he had nasal problems for about 3 years, and the vets couldn't figure out what was going on and stuff. Anyway, so so I got hired to work with Kobe, and so the next day I did a healing session with Kobe, and the day after he had an appointment with the vet. So the owner took him to the vet, and they found a bunch of white spots on his lungs. Didn't know if it was fungus or cancer or whatever, but the vet had recommended euthanasia because he was in such rough shape. And so he had an appointment for the next afternoon. And so the owner called me, and I said, well, you know, you don't have to make that decision right now. Like, let me give him a healing session tomorrow morning, and I'll talk to him and ask him if he's ready to go. And excuse me, so what Kobe told me was, he said, you know, he said, no, like, I want to give this healing a chance to see if it works. Like, if it works, then, I want to wait and see. So I told her that, and so she canceled his appointment, and I worked with him again one more time, and a few days later, she said, like, I've got my dog back. Like, he was running around, and, just like, she said, just like a puppy. And oh, and one of the things she said to me when I said, like, he didn't want to go, like, he wanted to give it a chance to see if this healing worked. And she said, like, that's the way he was. Like, he's a real fighter, right? And when she told me that, she had her dog back, like, I cried. Like, I was just like, wow, he would have been put down anyways. But I just checked with her, and he's still alive, so it's, sometimes too, like, another dog I worked with was really sick too, and the vet didn't know what was going on. And anyways, I was able, like, the dog told me, like, his stomach was like burning, and she got medication and stuff. And he ended up it was a dog, a female, Maggie. And she ended up being okay, and she ended up, like, passing, like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months later, but she got more time with her family, and she was feeling good. And when I hear stuff like that, it's like, yeah, I meant to do this. Yeah. And and my business has expanded. I worked with a dog in India. I couldn't believe that. And I worked with a dog in Australia, and lots of dogs in the States, or animals in the States. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is so awesome. And what
Mhm.
about death and dying, like animals who've passed over, and do you help
Yeah.
heal, or how would you connect with the animals and the humans from that
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah. Good question. So, um, I find, okay, I'll talk about before they actually pass. So, that's something that owners, really struggle with. Like, is their animal ready to go? Are they going to put their animal down too soon? Or are they,
Mhm.
are they, waiting too long? And, so I'm able to, help with that. And sometimes I don't really know. Uh, I think, that it might go one way, but it's another. Like, I worked with this one dog who was 18 years old, and he was blind and was going deaf and having a hard time walking. And I thought for sure he would be ready to go. And anyways, he told me that he wasn't. And he said because his mom wasn't ready.
Mhm.
And so I talked to her about it, and she said, well, I told him that if he, if he wanted to go, that he, he could. And I said, yeah, but he knows you're not ready, so animals will hang on because of that. I've been really, able to help a lot of families with, you know, planning. Okay, so if the animal's ready to go, what are their last wishes? Talking about things that they've done that they really enjoyed, what they've meant to each other. And it's really brought peace to people. And, like, in a time of sorrow, it's kind of brought peace to the situation. And the animals, too, like, after that, after having that conversation, they're much more relaxed, too, because they now know that their human understands, right? What they want. And so that's one side of it. And then another side is animals that have already passed over. I've connected with a lot of them, and I find it really helps the person with their healing, because so many people feel guilty about whatever is going on. They thought, like, one lady I worked with there, she took her dog in and just thought it was like the dog was sick, but she didn't know that the dog would be put down. And she felt tremendous guilt over that. And, so we connected with her dog, and, we talked about what she would have done if she had known, that if she had known that this was going to happen, she said she would have kept him home and they would have snuggled. And so we kind of went over that, and it just, I don't know what, each case is different, but I find it's just really brings peace to people. Like, that's what they say. I feel so much better. The healing that takes place and stuff. So yeah, pretty cool.
And then what about the animals that pass over?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
The ones that pass over, so a lot of times, like I say, people feel guilty, and the animal doesn't want them to feel guilty. Like, a lot of animals, they're okay over there on the other side, but a lot of them are really stressed because their owner, their whole family is torn apart, or they're just going through so much sorrow and depression. And what I find, a lot of people, and a lot of people have told me this, that they find it harder with the death of their animal than they do people passing, like they just, because there's just that unconditional love, just that connection, and yeah, so yeah, it's a really good service, and I find I'm better at it now. Like, I still get kind of emotional, but I realize the importance of it and the service and what it does to people, and their animals, to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm holding that together a bit more, and I just realized, well, that's something that people need.
Oh,
they need to be able to do that. Yeah.
so what do you do to maintain your own self-care?
Well, I meditate every day lately. Like, I've gone through periods where I haven't, but I have been for quite a few months now. So that really helps. I actually have a shaman Reiki guy that I go to once in a while when I feel really out of sorts, and just like-minded people. Like, I have a soul path group that I belong to, and just being around people like that. And yeah, I've just started yoga, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so it's really important, and getting out in nature is really important. And I've got my dog too, that I get out with him, and like, I find that really helps. Just, yeah, being out in nature is one of the huge things for me. That's just so soothing for my soul, and being around water, and just and trees, like hugging trees, the energy they have is amazing, stuff like that. Yeah.
Very cool. So what would you say, what's the biggest advice that you could give animal owners?
Basically, just to talk to them about everyday things, even like if you're going on a holiday, explaining to them, who's going to be looking after them. Like, are they going to, like, a doggy daycare or a kennel, like, or someone going to be coming to stay with them, and how many days they're going to be gone. And, most importantly, that you're going to be coming back to them, so just talk to them about everyday things, if there's, especially if there's change, especially if there's any change coming up, let your animals know so they understand. Yeah. So that's the most important thing, is just talk to your animals. And if you find that, okay, all of a sudden my animal's acting out of sort, just try and think of, okay, well, when did that happen? When did that start to happen? And maybe you'll be able to figure it out and talk to your animal about it. But it's so important just to talk to them. Just to talk to them. Yeah.
So you mean, like, in remembering past events or major experiences that happened in the family, just that coincide with some of the behavior patterns?
Exactly. Yes. Any changes, someone left, or another animal came in, or someone died, or someone's sick, like if all of a sudden you've going through an illness, and it affects our animals. So yeah, just take a look at that, and if there is something that's really traumatic and stuff, then it's good to try and find someone like me that can really talk to them about it and hear their side, and help them help them get through it, right? But the first step is to talk to them. Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
What's the I know I want you to tell the turkey story. I love the turkey story.
Oh, the turkey story. Okay. So I was out at Bear River, Bear River Valley Rescue, I think it's called it. Anyways, they have horses and stuff there. So I was there for the day, and they have turkey and other birds and stuff. And anyways, this one turkey, they called him the grumpy turkey. And this turkey would chase people and other birds all the time. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to connect with him and just see what's going on. And the first thing he told me was, he said, I'm the boss. And I said, oh, okay, you're the boss. And then I kind of went on to explain to him, like, you don't have to be mean to be the boss, you can work as a team. And, I kind of had that whole conversation with him, and he was thinking about it when I left. I don't know if he changed or anything, but it was just like, you don't have to be like that, but he, hopefully I made a little bit of an impact on him. Like I said, he was pondering it when I left. So I don't know how he is now.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool.
I love that. So we've talked about animal leadership, we've talked about manifestation with animals.
Yeah.
I love those topics.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And learning new things all the time too. So it's just different techniques to go to work with animals, that have been through trauma. Sometimes they don't remember what happened, and I've learned how to go into, even check the Akashic records to see, if I can find something out there that they're unable to remember. And just different cool techniques that you use all the time. And yeah.
Well, again, I never thought to use Akashic records on an animal. I mean,
Mhm.
I know lots of stories where, sometimes they say in reincarnation that you've been an animal together, or you've
Yeah.
been, in human form together, and then now you're in animal and human form together.
Yeah, I'll talk about my dog that I have now, Boomer. So I met him at the Humane Society, and the first time I met him, he was like hiding under the bed in the kennel and stuff. And anyway, so I went to work with him, and I was working with him for about a half hour or so, and he was way away from me, and I said, okay, I'm going to go now. And he jumped up on my lap, and so I spent another half hour working with him. And I'd been at the Humane Society for, I don't know, a few years by then. And anyway, so I went back the next time, and he was out in the front in the adoption area, and I spent an hour with him, and he's going like, I can help you in your business. And anyways, so I talked to my husband, and we ended up adopting him. And so I had him for about a week, and we were out on a walk one day, and he said to me, he says, I'm Jinx, I'm Jinx. And I looked at him, you're Jinx? And Jinx was a dog that I had over 20 years ago. And I'm like, wow, like, why didn't you tell me that before? I was saying, but then, I thought about it, and I think, if he would have told me that at the Humane Society, I probably would have questioned it, but it was just like out of the blue. And yeah, he has a lot of the characteristics of Jinx. And, he says we spent many lifetimes together, and, he does help me with my healing and in my business for sure. So, so yeah, reincarnation is pretty cool. Yeah, and so that definitely does happen. Yeah, so it's neat, and it was neat that I'm experiencing it with my own dog. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, I would
Yeah.
definitely say that you're on path. So if you were to look back at your life, like even just looking at your younger self, did you have any inclination that this would be a path for you at any point? Or were you completely closed until all of a sudden you were just kind of wide open?
Well, I mean, spiritually wise, like I don't think I really started to open up until I went through a rough marriage and stuff like that, and went through a crisis, and that's when I started to open up. But I mean, animals have always kind of come to me. Like I've, been sitting by a lake and I'll have a beaver come out, or muskrat or, it's, I've been, was lucky enough to be, meet these two moose, two like calves, maybe a year or two old. And that's quite a story anyways. And so they've always come to me. But did I think that I would be working with them for a living or doing this as a career path? No, like I've always just loved them so much. But, I was in corporate and I was in, human resources and, that was like 30 years I did that. And now here I am. And I have to say, like the first year or so, like I didn't tell people that I communicated with animals. Like, I didn't know what they would say. And now I really don't care. It's like, this is what I do.
What I do.
And just the difference that you can make, it's just, or I can make, it's just amazing. I just love it. Love it, love it, love it. Yeah.
But I think that's so interesting, like as I meet people and as people share their zone of genius, it's that there's so many different opportunities to offer services and it's listening to that deep inner calling. And it is sometimes seeing, like, one of my gifts is I always see the highest potential of people, but they need to see their highest potential, right?
Yes.
And I see the possibility. I see their gifts, especially as a Reiki master and teacher. I can see that they can tap into it, but if they don't practice it,
Yeah.
you have to. It's something that you do have to hone and practice as well. You can't be lazy with it, right?
No, no, no. It's, like with me, like I've had lessons or learnings from so many, famous animal communicators and just learning new techniques all the time, like, the Akashic records or one for traumatic release was this rapid eye movement thing. And like, when I learned that, I was like, holy man, like that's super cool. Like it just things like that, so just learning different things. And, I mean, that makes life exciting too, but it's
Well,
just
and
like,
these techniques all work on humans. Why would they not work on animals? Because they are
exactly.
emotional, sentient beings as well,
Yeah,
right?
they are. They're like angels. They're here to guide us and to, they have a life purpose. And I have to laugh. So one of the things I've learned to do with tuning forks is this spinal walk thing. And I was just working with a dog the other day that has degeneration in his spine. And so I was doing this spinal walk with him, and he told me, he said, okay, like, go a little slower and hold the tuning forks longer. And I'm like, that is so cool. So, he was helping me.
Yeah.
So,
I do the
and
same thing sometimes with other practitioners. I'm like, can you slow down? And I need you to put it here, and I
yeah,
need you to put it there. So why wouldn't an animal do the same?
yeah. And, and a lot of times, I don't tell owners this, but, a lot of times the animals will say, like, you are so good at this, Joy, like you're such a good healer, like, you
Awesome.
know, you need to keep doing this. So it's really nice to get the encouragement from them too. It's like, yeah, it's just,
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah,
it's profound. I haven't I work with animals, but I don't work with animals. Like I animals just kind of come to me.
yeah,
And I've had a lot of my clients say, "Why don't you work with my animals or my horses?" And I'm like, I work with people. My gift is working with people. I can
yeah,
work with animals, but I feel that the animals that are meant to come to me just kind of find me. And
yeah.
I remember this. It was a very interesting experience. It was a few years ago when I was getting tires changed or my brakes changed on my car or something. And I went to a place that I don't normally go, but I just wanted to support a small business in my neighborhood.
Hmm.
And I walked in, and they were young guys, who had this business, and they were very knowledgeable. They were very sweet, and
Hmm.
they had this dog named Princess, and
Okay.
it was all these guys, and then there's this beautiful, I can't remember what she was, but she was um, like a uh, probably like a Shih Tzu or like something like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Anyway, she came up, like I was at the desk, and she crawled up on the desk, and she went, and I petted her,
Yeah.
and then she would take my hand and she would take her nose and push my hand to where she wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she had quite a bit of pain going on in her stomach, her abdomen, and her hips. And I gave her a healing session and she
Yeah.
loved it. And she just laid there and she eventually rolled over on her back and and then one of the guys came in and I just kind of, made it look like I was petting her.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
and then they left, and then she took her nose and moved my hand again to where she wanted it to go. And it was so sweet, and it was just so powerful. Just that confirmation that animals sense, they know.
They do, and like I teach animal Reiki as well because working with animals is different than with people, and that's the thing is they lead the way, they show you, they know, they'll like, okay, I'll give you my hip, I need
Oh,
some
yeah.
help
Oh, yeah.
here.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
go to people's
yeah,
houses too, and they're like, my dog doesn't like anyone, and they're sitting at your feet, or
yeah,
one
yeah.
of my friends, they had two, uh, I can't remember what they're called right now. Anyway, two really sweet dogs, and they had gotten beaten up in the park. So a dog chewed into them at I can't remember if it was off leash or whatever it was. Anyway, both dogs ended
Mm-hmm.
up getting stitches, and they were not good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up spending the night at my friend's house out in Canmore, and the dog slept with me that night. And both of them, they didn't leave until the next morning, and they literally slept at my feet, slept around me, stayed with me, and
Yeah,
got the healing that they needed, and then off they
yeah.
went. So the coolest, I just love that animals know, and just, it's important, I think, to listen to them and to trust them and to pull them in instead of pushing them
Mm-hmm.
away. Just like
Yeah.
children, and like ourselves, we need to do that for humans as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
everything has a trifecta. It affects everybody, right? The human experience affects the animal experience. The animal experience affects the human experience. It
Totally,
all comes
totally.
back down to communication.
Yeah, the animal mind body connection and stuff. Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
cool. Well, we're just at the end of our time. Thank you so much. I love all the stories,
Oh,
and
you're welcome.
and I think that's the beauty of this is it's just we share through story. That's really all we can do, all right? And that's
Yeah,
the proof is in the experience of the owner, the animal, the behavioral changes. Um,
yeah.
it is it's an important thing, and I know a lot of people kind of, crinkle their nose and raise their eyebrow at it, just like everything else, But I think, it's such an important piece that we do need to take care of our animal kingdom.
We
And
do, we
yeah.
do. And and they're so giving, and they give, 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 and they get depleted. They
Mhm.
definitely need help too. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
grateful that I'm doing what I'm doing. I
Yeah,
love it.
that's so
Hmm.
cool. So even just one more piece of advice, maybe for for the humans of animals, what might even be something for them besides talking and communicating? Do you have any other suggestions or any other ways that they could support their animals?
Um, Well, there's so many different things, like, diet and exercise and all those kind of holistic things that can help them. Um, if you're having, if you've got an animal that's really sick and, you're not really getting anywhere, with a vet, or they are going, to a vet, but you think that they need extra help, like,
Mhm.
stuff, Reiki and stuff can really speed up the healing and, yeah. Just love your animals. Just love your animals, and I guess to realize, although I think most animal lovers do realize this, but just how intelligent that they are, and they are sentient beings, like they are souls, in an animal form, right? And I kind of laugh at you hear these studies, oh, like an animal can communicate or understand this, and it's like, yeah, and so much more. Right, so just treat them like you would your children, talk to them, explain things to them, and just love them. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
just love them. Oh, thank you,
yeah.
Joy.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much for being with us today. And you can connect with Joy at joyshealingtouch.com. I'll also be putting her information in the show notes below and the ways that you can connect with her. To our viewers, thank you for watching. I hope you found some value, and would love to invite you to continue the conversation. You can post in the comments below, share the video out as well, share it with your community. And if you'd also like to connect in to my Facebook community, Inspired Women Gathering, for a deeper connection and communication over there, I'd love to have you there. So until next time, love and light into the world, and abundant love always. Thank you so much. Bye for
Thank
now.
you. Bye now.